Hello, this is Ron from the Encyclopedia team. It is with great pleasure we have Dr. Marina Carrasco to this interview. Dr. Carrasco, before we dive in, our readers would love to get to know you a bit better. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Hi, and thank you for inviting me here for this interview. I'm an ENT, I'm otolaryngology, and I work in Valencia, which is a city in Spain. And since a long time, I've been working especially with patients with problems with obstructive sleep apnea. And mainly this is what I do every day in my clinical office in the hospital. I work in the hospital called Hospital Universitario Dr. Peset, and that's my main task there, to treat this type of patients.
Cool. So now let's move on to the main focus of this interview. Let's start with a basic definition so that all our readers are on the same page. What exactly is drug-induced sleep endoscopy, aka DISE? Can you explain what you mean or give an example?
Yes, of course. Drug-induced sleep endoscopy is just a test that we ENTs perform to the patients that have snoring or sleep apnea in order to know what is going on with them and the upper airway. The patients that have sleep apnea, what happens to them is that the upper airway collapses during the night. When they are sleeping, the upper airway collapses. When we usually see the patient in the consultation, they are awake. Therefore, this snoring, these collapses they are not there. We cannot see them properly. So this is a test. We send the patients to a special room, can be an operating room, can be a special room with all the equipment in case it's kind of resurrection necessary, like oxygen. We can monitor the patient, and then with the aid of drugs, let's say propofol, let's say midazolam, some others use another. It's not just the drug, but we put the patients to sleep almost like they were at home. And then we pass an endoscope through the nose so we can see what is going on, why these upper airway are collapsing. And this is what we are doing with DISE.
Thank you for your clarification. So our next question is, are you working on any new projects now? If so, how do you think that might help?
Well, it's not exactly new. We are trying to know, because the idea of DISE is, okay, now we see what is going on, how can we treat these patients better? So we are trying to figure out if this is true. If we do DISE, we can see what is going on. We can do the surgery specifically to the point that is being wrong, and if with this we are getting better results, and our patients, when they go for surgery, after that they get better results. And then, because in selected patients, the success rate of surgery, meaning soft tissue surgery, is like 50%. So we are trying to know if with this test we are increasing this success rate. That's one thing. And another thing would be what kind of surgery would be better depending on the type of collapse. Because not everybody collapses the same. Some patients collapse at the velum part, just behind the palate, the soft palate. And these patients can collapse like in an anterior-posterior way, but sometimes they collapse in a lateral way, another in a circular way, so they form a circle. So maybe it's not a good idea to perform exactly the same surgery to every type of collapse. So we are working now on that in order to know with that.
I sure hope your projects can bring better sleep for everyone in the future. So
That's what we hope.
So my next question is, so keeping DISE in mind, can you see any potential drawbacks about this exploration that scholars should think more deeply about?
Yeah, of course, everything has its good parts and its bad parts or drawbacks. The important thing about DISE is that it's not just you put the endoscope and that's enough. here you have a team. You have a team with the anesthetist that is doing the sedation. The sedation must be perfect, because in case the anesthetist puts a lot of doses, then the upper airway collapses completely and you cannot see exactly what is going on during the night. So that's one thing. You must keep the patient between kind of sedation, and for that we use the bispectral index, which is a kind of a sticker that we put here in the forearm of the patient of the patient, to know what is the depth of sedation. So must be very carefully monitored to be sure that what you are watching is really representative, because if it's the patient over sedated, the upper airway, as I say, is totally collapsed, and then the DISE is not so useful. Then another thing you have to keep in your mind is that some areas in the pharynx overlap. For example, when you are passing through the nose, you are passing in through the back of the palate. But here in front of the palate, in the front part of the palate, there's always the tongue. So the tongue can push against the palate, and you are watching a palate collapse, but actually is the tongue base the one that is causing this collapse, because it's pushing. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. So you have to have a three-dimensional picture of the patient in every patient. Then it's also important how you manage the endoscope, because you need to know the whole upper airway, but you have to know where you are in the whole upper airway, because it's not the same that you are thinking that you have a circular collapse in the palate, that you have a lateral collapse in the oropharynx a little bit lower, or in the tongue base. So you really need to know how can the upper airway react to what is going on, and how you put the endoscope to be sure that you are ranking it the way it should be. You also need to perform maneuvers to know all these things, because, for example, the most common surgery that we interns perform can be nose surgery, and also the uvulopalatopharyngoplasty, which is not the classical uvulopalatopharyngoplasty, because now we are trying to remodel more than resect the tissues in the pharynx. We try to keep the uvula, we just try to put the muscles in another place so they can splint the upper airway and made it more resilient to collapse. So we try to do other things, and it's important that we know exactly what's going on. It's different.
I see. From what you just described, it doesn't sound to me like the easiest operation in the world. So, what do you think about the development of DISE?
Yeah, well, it's not the easiest, but actually has a very short learning curve, because we as CNTs, we are very used to put the endoscope inside the patient when the patient is awake. So we know the levels. The only thing is get to used to do it when they are asleep, and that takes like 2 or 3 patients, not more. If you pay attention, you be patient, and all that is just that. The new things I think they will develop, apart from what I've already said, is that we need to know. Actually, we need a common classification, or we should have a common classification to say what is going on, because actually there are too many different classifications, and this is a bad point, because we really cannot compare what you see if I'm here in Spain from what another another ENT is watching, let's say in Hong Kong or Taiwan, or I know in those countries they are performing DISE too. So if they use a different classification method, I cannot see if what we are watching is exactly the same, or there are some difference, maybe because of the race of the people, the face structure, the weight. I don't know. It's a little bit of a problem here. This is something that we should how do you say that, sort it out somewhere.
So, what are the biggest challenges faced by DISE? What is the limitation?
Okay, the biggest challenge, I think one of the biggest challenges now is that to really know that what we are watching is what actually is happening during the night. But we know that there are several articles that show that comparing DISE with natural sleep, what we are watching, the levels of sedation, the apneas, hypopneas, all these kind of parameters are more or less the same that when the patient is sleeping at home, because those tests have been performed, but they are only just like 2 articles. So we would need more articles telling us that we are watching in this particular kind of patient. Nebricar is the same. That's one of the things DISE should provide us. And also the knowledge that I was telling you before, that you do this surgery to this type of collapse, the patient is going to be better. If you did instead this other type of collapse and you do the same surgery, is not so useful. That's another thing that is one of the most important things that DISE is going to provide us. Also, when there's no doubt that DISE is really, really helpful, is for the hypoglossal nerve stimulation, which is another type of treatment that some patients have. Is actually is the newest treatment for OSA. It's surgery, but what we do is we implant an stimulator to the hypoglossal nerve, which is just a motor nerve. So this is the nerve that pushes the tongue forward. If performing this movement, you can take it out of the airway, because move forwards doesn't collapse in the upper airway. But not every patient has a success after this surgery. So we are trying to know which patients are better, and for the type of collapse with complete concentric collapse, looks like unilateral intermittent stimulation is not so useful, but maybe with bilateral stimulation is not a contraindication. Maybe there's another type of stimulator that is in the market that they are doing more research, could be a problem or not. We need to know this about this kind of treatment too.
I see. Thank you very much for clarifying all the questions we have. So before we finish, is there any acknowledgement you would like to make?
Yeah, I would like to make an acknowledge to all the people that are working, well, all the co-authors in my article, and especially all the friends, the drug-induced sleep endoscopy friends and sleep surgeons that are working on this field to help us to know everything about this, because this is not my task. This is a thing for all of us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carrasco. We wish you and your team the best luck in the future. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.